Hello everyone. In this particular presentation, today we are going to discuss about good governance, and we will be looking at few features of what exactly do we mean by good governance and what are the characteristics and features of good governance. So let's take a view on the presentation one by one. So first, let's deal with the meaning and origin of the concept of good governance. Means exactly how this concept emerged, where it came from, and what do we mean by this concept of governance, that is good governance. So first of all, the concept of good governance can be traced back in 1990s somewhere, okay, where the World Bank was discussing all these important criteria for the better society, for better democracy. So as a part of that, this concept of good governance arose. So hence we can say that good governance is kind of, you can say, inclusion of transparency, accountability, responsiveness, inclusiveness in governance can be termed as good governance. Okay. So we will see one by one what exactly do we mean by transparency. Transparency is what whenever government is taking any particular decision. So at that time, it is expected that the decision or policy of the government is supposed to be seen and visible to everyone. It should not be hidden or it should not be, we can say, doubtful. Whatever decisions are taken by the government, whatever policy is formed by the government, all the actions of the government shall be visible to subject. That is, it should be visible to people. Second one is accountability. Accountability is what? Whenever we talk of government, so governments are what? Ultimately, they are facilitators. All the governments, whether it is central government, state government, or local government, irrespective of their authority and powers, all of them are supposed to be treated, or their basic duty is considered as facilitator. They are the facilitator of the people. Hence, if they are facilitator, if they are providing facilities, if they are providing services to the people, so it is obvious that they will need money, right? They will need revenue. So where this revenue will come from? And the obvious answer is taxation, right? So taxation is the only source of income, major source of income for the government. Remaining are also there, but taxation is the most important and the larger, you can say, part of government's revenue. So therefore, if people are paying tax to the government, so people are in return expecting that government also should be accountable to people. People should be in a position to ask and raise questions on the establishment, on the government. So therefore, what we need is accountability, right? Then the third term is responsiveness. What do you mean by responsiveness? Whenever any action happens or whenever any activity takes place in a particular society, government is supposed to react on that. Government is supposed to take measures to cure that problem, to resolve that query. So in such a way, we can say that if government is responding to such actions, such movements, then we can say that government is responsive. If government is just crushing down all the movements and oppositions and marches, so in such way, we cannot call government as responsive. Okay. So here the government is supposed to be responsive if at all we want to achieve or realize the concept of good governance. Inclusiveness is the most important point, that development cannot be done without, you know, taking all people in the decision making process or making them participate in decision making process. If only one category or only one community is, considered while taking the decision, so such decisions are supposed to be, against this concept of good governance. All communities, all castes, all categories, irrespective of any, bifurcation, any kind of differentiation, each and every section of the society is supposed to be considered while taking the decision at the level of government. whether it is central, state, or local, doesn't matter. So it was all about, you can say, the meaning of good governance. Basically, the concept of good governance was initially expressed in 1989, right, World Bank publication. They published a report in which they mentioned this word, good governance, and which is expected to be implemented by each and every country in the world. It is a kind of expectation which they have, extended, which they have asked, or they are expecting it from the government, that they will consider it and they will implement it in their own countries. So in 1992, the bank published, that is World Bank published, a report entitled The Governance and Development. The title of that report was Governance and Development, which explored the concept further and its application. Till that time, people were unaware, people were ignorant about this concept. But after the publication of governance and development report, immediately it was, explored. People came to know about it. Various countries, realized the importance of this report, and they started implementing the provisions, mentioned in such particular report. And therefore we have a very developed countries like Nordic countries, we can say, or Scandinavian countries like Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland. They are the best examples of the the one who has successfully implemented the concept of good governance in their society, in their country. So in 1997, the bank redefined the concept of good governance. They modified it, and it is expected that as per the time and need, as per the time and the need of time, we have to change those concepts and we have to modify them as per the requirements. So they also did that, and they modified the concept of good governance as a necessary precondition for development. They said that if at all you want to achieve the development, we can consider this point for development. The next point which we can take into consideration is that responsiveness, right? The concept of good governance is, we can say, quite responsive in nature. So it is expected that it is also, kind of responsive to the present and future needs of society. First of all, we have to deal with this concept that whenever any problem arises or any change occurs in society, whether it is one particular uh, region or one particular state or country, so you have to modify yourself, right? It is like one shirt doesn't fit all bodies. Same way, one policy doesn't function for all. So as per the need of society, we have to make changes in the system, right? And this is what exactly is expected in this concept of good governance, that whenever any change occurs, whenever any change takes place in the society, it is expected that we shall make the changes in our policy as per the requirement. And if we are doing it, then we can say that we are moving towards good governance. And if we are neglecting, and if we are, using the age-old policies, so we are going against this concept of good governance. So it assures that corruption is also minimized, the views of minorities are taken into account, and that the voices of most vulnerable in society are heard in the decision-making process. This is one of the important, we can say, criteria of good governance, that the corruption level, every year the corruption index is declared, and it is expected that in this corruption index, the level of corruption should be minimized to the lowest form. Hence, one way we can say that the corruption is supposed to be eradicated, the corruption level is supposed to be completely eradicated, and good governance is trying to achieve a kind of corruption-free society. For that reason, this most important point is included or added in the concept of good governance. Along with that, the minority rights are also supposed to be taken into consideration, because generally what happens in democracy is the meaning of democracy is misinterpreted many times, saying that the one who has majority should rule or should dominate. Actually, it is not the meaning of real sense of democracy. It's true that the decision should be taken on the basis of majority. That's absolutely correct. But along with that, we have to ensure that the minority rights should not be violated. While protecting the majorities, minorities are also equally important in the society, and for that reason only, the minority rights are also supposed to be preserved, and that is the reason due to which the importance is given to minority rights in good governance concept. Not only minorities, even we can see the most vulnerable sections, right? Many times they are not heard also, or they are not seen also anywhere, right? So they are also supposed to be, you know uh, delivered a kind of justice. They are also supposed to get the justice. So giving justice or making policies which are suitable to the downtrodden section or weaker section is also expected in good governance. So in short, we can say that good governance is all about, democratization, wherein the more rights are given to people, right? More authorities are given to people. Every country should be democratized, right? And no dictator or no military general or no monarch should hold all the powers, right? Actually, the powers or authorities are supposed to be given to the subject, that is people. If the government is governing or ruling on people, so people's consent is important, right? And for that reason only, the good governance is giving more importance to the process of democratization. Along with that, when you talk about democratization, so of course rule of law cannot be ignored, that even if you have prime minister, you have cabinet ministers, you have president, and so many other ministers, right? So they are, as I said in the beginning, they all are considered as the facilitators, right? And not the rulers. They all are governing the country. They are helping the government to function properly. They are assisting, right, the leaders of the countries. So it doesn't mean that they hold all the powers and they should rule the country. They are supposed to govern the country and not rule the country. So they are a kind of regulators, right? We can say they are a kind of regulators of the society, and therefore the basic rights of the people should be considered while taking any decision. And for that reason only, again, human rights comes into the picture, right? We have the concept of human rights. The concept of human right is also important, and the United Nations General Assembly, right? United Nation has also prescribed few rights of every individual, which are supposed to be preserved by the government of the country or of that particular state. Okay, so therefore, human rights are equally important, and they are, we can say, most prioritized in this concept of good governance. So even if we can say culprit is there, or even if a victim is there, even if we can say accused is there, each and every one's rights are equally important. Unless and until someone is, can say proven guilty, till that time everyone is innocent. So even criminals are innocent until they are proven guilty by the judiciary. So therefore their rights are also equally important. Even if they are punished, still they have some human rights. So that is basic part of good governance, we can say. So inclusive development and movement towards transparent governance, is also known as good governance. Now, what do you mean by inclusive development? It is again that each and every section of the society is supposed to be taken together while going towards development. You cannot leave any section behind, and you cannot develop alone. That's the thing. So each and every section of the society is supposed to be taken together while going or moving towards a development. So that is the basic criteria. Now let us see few features of good governance. The most important features, you can say, I have listed all 8 features in front of you. And as you can see, the first one, people's participation in governance. This is the most important, right? Now, initially we had in our mind that only ministers, or you can say leaders, political leaders, they are supposed to run the country. But this concept of good governance is trying to change this myth, or they're trying to change this concept. It says that not only ministers or leaders are supposed to run the country, it's people, right? People are supposed to participate actively in governments. Like whenever any government is supposed to take any policy decision, so at that time, people are also supposed to play equal important role while framing the policy, right? It's not that once you have voted in 5 years, right? Once you have voted in election, you have elected the government and your role is over. It's not like that nowadays. That was the old tradition, but now it has changed. Along with voting, you have to participate in governance as well. So therefore, people's participation is equally important in governance. Second one is rule of law. Okay. So even though we have elected our representatives and they are running the countries, in the form of minister, prime minister, or president, or many other posts on there, doesn't mean that they are supposed to rule the country. Then who should rule the country? It is the law. Okay. Law should prevail. Okay. And therefore, rule of law is important and not rule of individual. Prime minister or president or any cabinet minister cannot use their own whims, right? They cannot bring their whimsical ideas while governing. They are supposed to abide the constitution of that particular country, and therefore rule of law, whatever is mentioned or enshrined in that particular constitution of the country, each and every one is supposed to function as per that constitution, and therefore this concept of rule of law is essential over here. Third one is transparent governance. As we discussed in the beginning, that whenever the governance is being done, whenever any decision is taken by the government, those all decisions are supposed to be transparent. Now, what do you mean by transparent? That each and every decision of the government should be visible to people. They should be able to see, check, assess, reassess, okay, and criticize, give its feedback. Right? This all concept or this all things goes on, and therefore transparent governance is equally important. That whatever actions are taken by the government, those all actions should be visible to people, and people will decide that whether you are doing correct or incorrect. Okay, so for that reason, transparency is equally important in good governance. Then you have responsive government, that whenever any need is there in society, okay, like the present pandemic, right, the corona. So whatever is the situation, as per that, the government is supposed to react on it, right? The government is supposed to react on that. Government is supposed to take measures to avoid that pandemic or to remove the pandemic. Okay, so responsive government, as I said, that whenever any problem arises in society, government is supposed to stand against that. Government is supposed to take measures to avoid those problems, right? So not only this pandemic, whatever problems are there, whatever difficulties are there, which are faced by the people, those all difficulties are supposed to be treated by the government. Government is supposed to take it on priority and take necessary actions to avoid the problem. Okay, so it is kind of responsiveness. Government is supposed to respond to those all problems and should take the necessary steps to help people and say change themselves or remove any kind of problem if at all existing in the particular situation. Okay, so that was about responsive government. Then we have consensus-oriented government. That first of all, whenever the governments are made good, as per this concept of good governance, it says that there should be consensus of people while constituting the government itself. Like, for example, democracy. In democracy, people are voting, right, to their representatives. They are casting their vote, right, and they are electing their representatives, and those representatives are running the country, right? They are governing on we can say in the country, and therefore we can say that those governments are legitimate in nature, right? They are completely legitimate. Why? Because people have voted them in power, right? Unlike we have military regimes or we have dictatorship or monarchy, kingship, right? So those kinds of governments are not subscribed, or those kinds of governments are not favored by good governance. It says that we need such government where people's rights will be respected, like people's liberty authority will be respected, and that is, we can say, mostly seen in democracy and not in other regimes of governance. And therefore the government is supposed to be based on the consent of people, right? And not only that, that whenever the government is taking any decision, at that time also the consent of people is required in that, right? It's otherwise the people are thinking in one way, or government is taking the decision in another way, is also not expected, right? The government is supposed to facilitate people, therefore people's consent should be respected while taking any particular decision. Of course, there is a question of, again, that legal or illegal laws, or you can say moral or immoral laws. So that is different part that we can deal with that later on. But the thing is that the government of the day is supposed to consider about the consensus. It is supposed to treat people respectively, and all those rights and liberties of individual should be respected as mentioned in the constitution. The next one is equality, justice, and inclusiveness. Right? Equality, this concept is also discussed before, that each and every person, irrespective of on any ground, no discrimination is permissible. Right? Only we can say affirmative action is quite permissible. Otherwise, discrimination is not favored at all in any case in good governance. Justice is supposed to be delivered and not delayed. Okay. It is said that justice delayed is justice denied. And therefore, efficient and effective justice and quick justice is supposed to be delivered to the people of society. And in that only we have inclusiveness. We have seen that also, inclusiveness, that inclusive decision making should be there. It's not that one section is kept aside, or one community is kept aside, and keeping them aside you are taking the decision. That is also not expected. Inclusiveness, right? In inclusiveness you are supposed to treat each and everyone equally, and you are supposed to take everyone together, while framing any policy in society. Okay. And therefore you have, when you whenever you follow all these norms, so automatically what comes? Effectiveness and efficient governance. Like, governance is also, we can say, achieved only when other points are realized, whatever we discussed. That effectiveness and efficientness in governance is expected. And of course, whenever we talk of governance, so we have public officials for that. They are supposed to be highly active, right? They are supposed to be efficient in their duty. And along with that, if at all any public official is not performing their task well, so we have civil society, right? We have society which pressurizes them, so that automatically decision should be taken by the people sometimes, right? Not we can say decision means not killing or something like that. Decision means, we can say, simply people can approach judiciary, and judiciary will give verdict on that. right? So in this way, people can play effective role in governance, to which we call, can say, public plea, right? Or can say people themselves can approach to judiciary if something is going wrong in the society. So at that time, in such situation, judiciary will deliver the justice as per the situation. And last one is accountability. Just now, few minutes ago, we discussed this concept of accountability. That people are, the taxpayers of this country. If people are paying the taxes, each and every person, many would say that I do not pay tax because I don't pay income tax, but that's not the reality. Each and every person in the country is paying tax in the form of indirect taxes, okay, which now has become GST, okay, indirect taxes. So therefore I'm saying that each and every person is paying tax in this country, and if you are the taxpayer, so of course you should have authority to hold the accountable, hold the government accountable, right? Government is supposed to be accountable to you. You can ask direct question to the government, and government is supposed to answer every question of yours, right? And whatever problems are there, you can directly approach to government. And if at all government is not responding, we have judiciary for that, and judiciary will deal with that problem. So therefore accountability is also essential in good governance. So these were the few important points which we have discussed, and the important features which we just discussed. I hope you got some knowledge out of this, and thank you for peacefully listening.